Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. When we try to understand what is the problem here in Palestine between Jews and Arabs, the question is, when does the history of this region start? This is actually the question. When do we start to count history? What parts of history we take seriously? What events in history are those who shape our view about the region? And this is where the basis of the problem is, on one side. The other side is religion. Unfortunately, both sides, history and religion, in the West, and mainly in the United States of America, are being marginalized. First of all, American history is 220 something years, 30 something years, since 1770 something. And religion in America is more or less in God we trust, which we have on the currency. Officially, religion should not play a role in public life, in politics. Of course it does, but not officially. And the people try to marginalize, especially modern liberal elites, try to marginalize everything which is connected to religion. It is a matter of personal belief between the person and the deity. It shouldn't have any influence on anything. Unfortunately, in the Middle East, both sides of the view are totally different. History in the Middle East is regarded as the most important issue when it comes to what we call rights and duties. And religion plays a major role in any consideration connected to public life. This is basically and profoundly why Western people, especially Americans, find it hard to understand the Middle East in general and the Palestinian-Israeli problem in particular. Therefore, they try to find all kinds of superficial solutions, like give them jobs, give them money, give them support, and everybody will sit around the fire and everybody will sing kumbaya together if they only have what to eat and jobs and swimming pools and good life. Means Americans, unfortunately, too often project their views, their mindset, their scale of priorities, their world of values on others, thinking that everybody wants the same thing, just like Americans. And this, by the way, is the source of the failures of the American thinking in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in other places as well. So since here we try to understand the problems, we'll dedicate today to the issue of history, the role of history when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. And the next meeting, which will be in 3 days from today, will be dedicated to the religious component.
Participants.
Oh, it's a different?
Yeah, it's the same lecture, double.
Okay. So I'll divide today to both sides. I'll speak faster. History. We Jews returned to our forefathers' land, which we were expelled from 19 centuries ago. This land, as we call it, the Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, here we had two dynasties with two temples, first and the second one. Altogether, some to around 1,000 years of temples in Jerusalem, two temples in Jerusalem, some dozens of years in between. At least two, if not three, dynasties reigned in Jerusalem, and the size of the land differed from larger in the days of David and Solomon to lesser space in later times. Yet the center was always Jerusalem, and Jews, since they were expelled from this country in the year of 70, after the destruction of the Second Temple, remained loyal to the country, prayed to the country from wherever they were in the world. Few of them remained in this country all the time. Many of them tried to get to the land of Israel, maybe even to be buried in the land of Israel. Well known through history, the Jews tried to be buried wherever they died with a little sack of sand brought from this country to them to put their head on these little bags full of sand from the land of Israel. In every happy and sad occasion, Jews were memorizing Jerusalem, and wherever they prayed, every prayer, morning, noon, or afternoon, evening, after meal, weddings, and whenever Jews prayed, they prayed to the direction of Jerusalem. Even in their houses, many Jews didn't finish building it, left square foot, unpaved, in order to commemorate the destruction of the temple. When Jews started to come back to Israel at the 18th century, the Gaon Rabbi Eliyahu's students who came from Eastern Europe, it began a wave of returning to the country. Then from the 18th century and 19th century, and of course during the 20th century, especially after the Holocaust. The Zionist movement started in the end of the 19th century, 114 years ago, 1897, the first Zionist conference in Basel, in Switzerland, in the end of August of that year. And of course it happened 15 years after Jewish new settlements were built here in this country, starting with Petach Tikva, later Rosh Pina, Rehovot, Es Tziona, Rishon LeZion, all these. So definitely, Jews view this country or this state, which was established or announced in 1948, as a continuation of the Jewish presence on this country, which started 3,300 years ago, when the Israelites came into this country on the way from Egypt. For some unknown reason, Israel counts its establishment since the year of 1948 CE, although it would be much more logical to start the state from the days of King Saul, at least, which was more than 2,000 years ago. For some unknown reason, modern Jews more or less detached themselves culturally from the former eras of Judaism in this country. And we can elaborate on this, but we won't get into this yet. More traditional Jews do see themselves as a continuation here of their forefathers who lived in this country. So, whether you are a liberal who culturally detached yourself, but actually all those, even liberal Jews, modern Jews, who do not stem their worldview from the Second Temple, yet they came to this country, not to Uganda, not to Argentina, not to Russia, not to any other place in the world, only to this place. Means definitely they were feeling a very deep connection to this country, that they were even ready to die in the war, in order to redeem this country and to settle it again. So even if they were not religious and not so much aware of the history, yet the country itself was alive in their veins. This is why they came here, not to any other place in the world, to re-establish their independence and public life as a state. When we look at the other side of the equation, the Palestinian one, we start, okay, when is the beginning of the Palestinian nation or people who were here, when they are mentioned and where they are mentioned? We can look in ancient books, from cover to cover, no one mentions it. The Quran, although mentioning Bnei Israel, the sons of the Israelites, or the Jews, hundreds of times, the Palestinian people is never mentioned in the Quran. Means in the 7th century, when the Quran was written, evidently the Palestinian people was not an important people in those times. But no other book as well mentions the Palestinian people until the 20th century. The first time in history when a Palestinian people is mentioned is in the 20th century. Why? And here we cannot ignore the fact that the Middle East, the whole Middle East, was, or at least this region, was one country named Sham. And if we look at the maps of today, all the space which today is Syria, Jordan, the land of Israel, Lebanon, all this region is called in Arabic Sham. Sham. And this was one country. In every Arab writing, whenever, since the beginning of Islam.
S-H-A-M?
S-H-A-M. Academic transliteration, it's a long A. Sham. And this is how it was related to. It was an open space. People could go from place to place. All those borders which we see today were not marked. All those borders are the result of the First World War, when the British and the French occupied this land from the Ottomans and divided it with the time to independent states like Syria, Lebanon, Transjordan Emirate, which later became the Kingdom of Jordan, and a mandate on Palestina, the land of Israel, both together. And ever since then, we are starting to talk about Jordanian people, Syrian people, Lebanese people, and Palestinian people. And I'm talking about since the 30s, when it started to shape the map of this region. Jordanians are not mentioned before 1920, neither are Syrians nor Lebanese as state, and of course not Palestinians. The whole thing is a creation of the colonialism which occupied this region and divided it to these countries, to a degree that even these days, when it comes to Palestinian people, or important people like Knesset member Azmi Bishara, for example, when he, in the TV, years already, look what he is saying. Listen. אני חושב שאין אומה פלסטינית. I think that there is no Palestinian people.
When was it?
Like 25 years ago. He looks with black hair, and also the guys with... Listen. Listen.
אני חושב שיש אומה, אני חושב שיש אומה ערבית. אני תמיד חשבתי ככה, את דעתי, אני לא חושב שיש Palestinian nation.
אני לא חושב שיש Palestinian nation. I don't think that there is a Palestinian nation.
אני חושב שזה המצאה קולוניאלית, Palestinian nation.
אני חושב שזה המצאה קולוניאלית. I think this is a colonialist invention.
כולם פה מבינים. It's good. לא נכון.
מתי היו פלסטינים?
זה טוב לזה.
Palestinian nation. מתי היו פלסטינים? איפה זה? מה?
Now look at how his Jewish counterparts are astonished. You know who this guy is? Shlomo Ben Ami, historian. אני חושב שיש אומה ערבית. I think that there is an Arab nation. In spite of my vicious fight against the occupation, I didn't become a Palestinian nationalist. Never. I think that until the end of the 19th century, Palestine was the south of Great Syria, the Sham, this area, Great Syria. Okay, this is the end. Okay? Now, Azmi Bishara, as everybody knows, he is a very, very small Zionist, advocates even terror against Israel, of Hezbollah, a good friend of Assad, the father, and Assad, the son, Nasrallah, and because of some investigations, he decided to leave the country and not come back to the country, giving up on his position as a Knesset member. Okay, so, and here he is saying it very, very, very clearly, and in his voice, and he doesn't even feel ashamed to say that there is no Palestinian nation. This is a colonialist invention. So people today started to talk about invented people. As you might know, Newt Gingrich. So this is exactly this. So definitely, this is an outcome of the First World War, and now starts the history of what we call, of what the world calls, Palestinian nation. And actually, the struggle over this country is a struggle between an ancient people, the Jewish people, who came back to their forefathers' land, a people which is even mentioned in the Quran, not only in the Bible, in the Quran itself. and a group of people who are mentioned as a nation only, let's say, 80 years, the maximum, maybe even less. So this is actually where history comes into this equation. Which nation has the right over the country? One who was here according every history book which is printed in the world, or a nation or a people which was created or defined, I would say, some dozens of years ago. This is one question. Second question is how those who are called Palestinians became a nation here. Okay, they declared, or others declared, that they are a nation. However, when we go and we check the phone guide of any place in Palestine, either inside Israel or in the what we call the Judea and Samaria or West Bank or Gaza or others in other places, we can see very strange things. That many of them carry names until today. Like Al-Iraqi means
Iraq.
from Iraq. Al-Masri, the Egyptian. One of the leading families in Shechem, in Nablus, is the name of this family is Al-Masri. Or Masarwa in the Israeli north, which is the plural of Masri. Al-Khorani. Al-Khoran is the region, this region is called the Khoran in Syria. People from this country, from this region, emigrated to Israel or to Palestine, mainly during the 30s, looking for work. Well, they were brought by the British in order to work in the Haifa harbor, because people here wanted more money, so they brought Arabs from the Khoran who took less. So Al-Khorani, many of them carry names like Al-Khorani. As-Sorani. Sorani is from Tzor, the city of Tzor, which is Tyre, a city in Lebanon. Sidawi, from Sidon, in southern Lebanon. Tarabulsi is from Tripoli, but not in Libya, but Tripoli in Lebanon, in northern Lebanon usually. And Zarqawi, in Nazareth there is a big family name. Zarqawi means that they are from Zarqa, in Jordan, what Jordan today is. Karaki, and many, many other names which testify that they originally came from other places to this country. They came, everyone came from a different reason, usually to work, and many of them came through the 20s and the 30s, in order to work in Jewish farms, like in Sejera, in Ilania, in Rosh Pina, Rehovot, Rishon LeZion, all those farms, all those villages which were built ever since 1882, when Petach Tikva started the line of Jewish towns, or what later became towns, which were populated by peasants, Jewish peasants who came and had farms. So those Arabs emigrated to this country to work. And actually, when the Histadrut, the trade union here in Israel, was established in 1920, the first battle which those members in the Histadrut had is about Avodah Ivrit. Means Jewish work. Means you Jews employ us Jews and don't employ those Arabs. After all, Jews wanted to live as well. So this was actually the struggle here between those Jews who were here or came here to renew their Jewish life in this country, and Arabs who immigrated to this country in order to work in their farms. Later, they started struggling on this country, and until this very day, the struggle continues. But look, I'm not saying that the country was totally empty from Arabs when those Jews started to coming. There were cities like Yafo, and Nazareth, Nablus, and others. Definitely, there were Arabs here, but not in such density as it is until today, because many of them emigrated to this country mainly because there was work here, just like they emigrate today to Europe or to other places in the world to work. So this is how they came here. And the borders were open, and actually the records of the British mandate actually testify about hundreds who came every night, and the British couldn't care less about those who come in, the flood of those who came into this country in order to work here in this country. Later, during the 30s, especially between 1936 and 1939, was the big Arab revolt. After clashes between Jews and Arabs, which already started in 1920, again in 1929, but the 3 years of 1936 and 1939 were what they call today the big Arab revolt, which was against the British and against the Jews who emigrated in large numbers to this country. It was initiated by the willingness of those Arabs to keep their working places, but was translated later by all kinds of incitement, mainly by the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who tried to crystallize a Palestinian nationhood or awareness of nationhood within the Arabs. Whether he succeeded or not, there are debate about this. During the 1948 war, many of the Arabs who lived here left the country as refugees, and this is what is called until today the refugee problem. Many of them just returned to the countries where they came from: Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, you know it. But the local authorities prevented them from going back to their villages or to the towns, because they wanted them to go back to Israel in order to undermine the Jewish majority in this country. And they were kept, they are still kept in refugee camps 63 years after 1948. There is nowhere in the world where people are being kept in refugee camps 63 years. Only here in the Middle East, and only with the Palestinian refugees, which originally not all of them are Palestinians. And in Lebanon it's even more, because during the 50s the Lebanese system was very shaky, and there were many domestic problems in Lebanon. So many Lebanese moved to live inside the Palestinian refugee camps, because UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, gave their food for free. So many Lebanese moved to live inside the 10 Palestinian refugee camps inside Lebanon. So there are not even one day in this country, but they are viewed today as Palestinian refugees, and they are on the payroll of UNRWA, which has totally different criteria than any other agency in the world, how to consider what is a refugee. And ever since then, what is called Palestinians are divided between 4 places in the world. One is inside Israel, and as you might know, like 20% of the people in Israel are Arabs, mostly define themselves as Palestinians. Another part are in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, in refugee camps. Third part are in the close exile, like in Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. And another part are all over the world. All claim their right to return to this country, in spite of the fact that most of them were not born here, but are descendants of people who lived here for a while. For a while, when they came to work in this country, most of them. So the question of return, right of return, which comes to the picture every time and again, is very questionable. And according to the world criteria of refugees, they have no right to return, just like other refugees in the world, which have the right to return within 10 years. After 10 years, they are not viewed by the world as refugees, and their problem should be solved in other places. This is how the UNHCR, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, works everywhere else in the world. Only here, when it comes to the Palestine and the Israelis, there is one agency which works only or operates with them and perpetuates their status as refugees forever to their descendants and in no limit of time. Very strange, very odd situation, and many understand today that the problem between Israel and Palestinians will never be solved as long as this agency operates, because it perpetuates the problem rather than solving it. This is, I would say in a nutshell, the historic way how to look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The other side of the equation is the religious way. Most, sir?
Can you ask questions now?
Yes, you know, okay.
You mentioned, it sounds by your description that most Palestinians, or people who consider themselves Palestinians here, were coming from our neighbors.
Yes.
About 100 years ago, more or less. But there are some natives. Some natives that lived in
yes, definitely.
an acre in Jerusalem,
yes.
Other cities. Can you put numbers behind that? What portion did come like that, and what portion?
Nobody really knows the numbers, because this region was never an isolated region to be counted separate from other places in the world or in the Middle East. Look, first census which was taken in the Middle East was in the 30s. The first one in Lebanon. Until then, people were not counted. People didn't count people because they didn't think it's important. Look, notions of democracy, which enhances the number of people how many support this side and how many support this side, are new to this region. This is why the number of people here never made any difference, especially when Bedouins, and this is the basis of the culture of the Middle East, they are wandering from place to place according to the grass which they can find for the sheep, and water and seasons of the year. So look, I'll give you another good example. Thanks. There was a shuttle, a train between Haifa and Beirut. A train which a few times a day went the day. People could live in Beirut and work in Haifa, and vice versa. Could live in Haifa and work in Beirut. Imagine that one day there is a war and the shuttle stops running, and the tunnel in Rosh Hanikra is being blocked, and some people are stuck where they were working and not at home. So what are they? They are Palestinians or Lebanese? Okay? It was the same thing, the same area. People could go from Haifa to Damascus every day with a train, just like people go between Haifa and Tel Aviv. So it was not different country to be counted separately. So nobody really knows. There are all kinds of estimations. The estimation is that half of the population left in 1948, around 600,000 left in 1948. Most of them are newcomers, which claim the right to return to this place. By the way, the resolution 194 which mentions the right of return, not as an obligation, but as an option, states that only those who were here at least 2 years, means they came here no later than mid-May 1946, they were here at least 2 years, only they have the right to return. Those who were here less than 2 years do not have the right of return. Within 2 years you become a nation. Okay, so there are all kinds of strange things about this. Somebody who was here for 2.5 years is a Palestinian? Okay, these are the questions, sir.
At the beginning you said that the Palestinians were not mentioned in any book until the 20th century.
Yeah. Not even a newspaper.
Yeah, if you ask the average man on the street, he would say, yeah, of course, the Plishtim are the Palestinians. Plishtim, Goliath. How can you refer?
Every bit of information, or almost, which we know about those, are from the Bible. And the Bible mentions that they came from the Aegean Sea, between Turkey and Greece. While Arabs, as we all know, came from the Arab Peninsula in the 7th century. So how can you bridge between these two facts? They call themselves Palestinians because this country was named Philistine or Philistine by the Romans in order to denigrate the Jews who were here, and so the Romans called it Philistine. Actually, Adrianus, the Caesar Adrian, he was the one who named this country Philistine. And we carry this thing until today. There are Arabs who came from the Arab countries, from the Arab Peninsula in the 627 and 8, occupied this country with the second caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, and settled here, like many other nations before them, who came here, like the Byzantines and the Persians and others, who occupied this country, settled here, until they were kicked out by those who came later.
So these are not the same people?
They speak Arabic. The religion is based in the Arab Peninsula, so, and they have nothing in common with the culture with the Aegean Sea. So the name is only because they came to this country, which was named Philistine by the Romans. This is the only connection between them and Philistine. Yes, sir.
Two questions. One, when can you put the dot, the change the perspective about the refugee and the creation of the Palestinian nation? You're speaking about a lot of...
it's a process. It was a process.
So when do you put it? Because a lot of scholars now in the West have different opinion and research to what you just said. They see that the nation started in the 19th century. Even you got Kimmerling who said it's the beginning of the 19th century. So the research is quite different. So where is if we want to base our knowledge on facts? And I know that a lot of the things are true. I read a lot of places and last name and places even like Dovrat and Dvorah in the north, and like mentioned in the Bible. So what changed the perspective about this?
I would go to a library and look for books who mention people. Look, you can create retrospective, you can create whatever you like. Go to libraries, look for ancient books which were printed in the 19th century, and find the first time when something is mentioned. You can assume that this is more or less the beginning or a bit after the beginning. If you find a book before 1920, which was printed before 1920, mentions the Palestinian people, I would accept it. So far, no one found. You know what? Newspaper, notebook, newspaper, which mentions Palestinian people before 1920. I would change my mind about this. Yet, nothing was found before then. By the way, Jordanian people are the same. And Syrian people are the same. And Lebanese people are the same. Because all these are new creations after the First World War. So,
I have a question about the refugees. And about UNRWA. What is their response for the different policy? And
they have different charter.
How can it be they're the only organization that don't allow the refugees to integrate inside the society? What is the response?
This is the situation. They don't have to respond. to respond. Somebody is a student in Bar-Ilan, somebody is a student in the Hebrew U, so on.
But in the UN there is two bodies that deals with
Definitely, yeah.
One is for the whole of the world,
Yeah.
and one is only for the Palestinians. Isn't that
Right?
weird?
Politics. Because the Arab world pressed to have different charter. The Arab oil also helped this process. The United Nations is a very politicized organization.
But they never respond about what you said. I mean,
They don't have to. Thank goodness they don't have to. UNRWA takes care of them and that's it. And by the way, the American taxpayer pays for this and the others to perpetuate the problem rather than solving it.
And another issue about the right of return, you said about the in order to find a solution, we have to deal with the issues of refugees in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan. But what about the right of return of Jews that was divorced from their houses in Iraq and in Syria and in Jordan and in Cairo?
You're right.
We also have rights there, as they claim to be part of Jaffa or in Tel Aviv. Some of the Jews here in Israel can say, yes, I also have property in Cairo and in Jordan also.
Well, I saw once a research which was made about the assets which Jews left in those countries. Turns that what the Jews left in the Arab world worth way much more than what Arabs left here. So definitely you have a claim to get either compensations or I don't know what. But there is a difference. The world never heard about Jewish refugees. The world keeps hearing about Palestinian refugees. I would even say we Jews did not profess being refugees. We didn't make it into a profession. We solved the problem. We absorbed, better or less. But Israel, since the 60s, doesn't know anymore about what we call ma'abarot, all those temporary neighborhoods which were built for refugees, and everyone became an Israeli, and we became Israelis. And I would even say that the biggest success of Zionism is not to bring the Jews out of exile or to take Jews out of exile. The biggest success of Zionism is to take the exile out of the Jews. Means to create an Israeli nation with a new mentality of a free, self-confident people here in this country, while leaving the exile behind their backs with the assets. So now, since we created the new mindset of an Israeli who is free from exile, it is hard for us to start convincing now the world, hey guys, we left in exile some assets. Because we detached ourselves from our past in exile. We did it willingly. We did it because we looked forward, we didn't look backward. So now coming and claiming, hey guys, we want to have some billions from Morocco, from Iraq, or from other places, the world will look at this as something suspicious, because the world never heard about this. While the Palestinians did not stop crying about what they left after they were living here for 3 years only. Okay? So this is the difference. They made their refugeehood into a profession. We did not. Sir?
With turning refugeehood into a profession, Palestinians are the only nation, or one of the only nations in the Arab world who have not had uprisings. We look at the map and look at every country surrounding Israel.
Well, during the last year?
During the last year, during the last 2 years, 3 years. And if you look back in history...
Well, they had the Intifada against us twice.
But I'll get to the point. If we look back 50 years, there were uprisings in Egypt. There were a couple in the surrounding countries. It's not something that's new to the Arab world. So my question is, what is what is the reason, if it's historic or something else, that the Palestinians in this last in this last round of uprisings and before have risen up against Israel dafka and not against their own leadership? Because that, where I look at it, their leadership is the main problem if they want to get eventually to statehood. And instead of uprising against them, they're fighting us.
Look, you should give Palestinians or those people or those Arabs who live in Judea and Samaria and Gaza some credit that they know their leaders and their leaders know them. They are not strangers to each other. Their leaders really respond to what they think the people want. Not usually, but much more than the Israelis. The fact that Palestinians today are not part of what we call the Arab Spring is because of some reasons. One of them is, yes, the Israeli rule. Means Israel succeeded to take out most of the activists on the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and left the people there without activists, especially activists of Hamas, of Jihad, with the cooperation of the Palestinian Authority. Everyone who tries to agitate this situation being taken either by the Palestinian Authority and Israel, and during the last 3-4 years there is a very, very good cooperation. Everyone and the Palestinians cooperate with Israel not because of they became Zionists, because they want to keep the PA in the West Bank in order to prevent what happened in Gaza to happen again in the West Bank. Means they do it in order to save their rule, no doubt, and this is the reason why they don't means the activists are behind the bars, and this is why their ability to wage a second intifada or third intifada is limited. In Gaza, they can complain only to Hamas, and Hamas treat them just like an Arab regime, with no mercy. So they are afraid of Hamas, so they keep hold their peace in Gaza. So between the Israeli and PA rule in the West Bank and the Hamas rule in Gaza, they are silent, not because they like Hamas or because they like Israel or they like PA. They are being held. Look, on the other side, their economy becomes better. It's not the whole thing, but they have what to lose. Not that it changes much, but yet it does has its influence. I think I would like to go to the other side of religion, which again is something which is very, it's not easy to understand. Islam, from the beginning, how long do I still have?
Until 7:15, 15 minutes.
Well, I hope to finish. Islam as a religion was viewed from the beginning as a very suspicious religion. It even is stated in the Quran that the cousins or the brothers of Muhammad in Mecca were accusing him of recycling the legends of the former religions. And this is the Quran states, that he was suspected that all these stories which he brings about Adam and Eve and Joseph and the sons of Israel in Egypt and Pharaoh and Jesus and all these sages of the former religions is actually a replica of Judaism and Christianity. And Islam was viewed as suspicious religious from the beginning, as something which is not original religion. So since the beginning, Muslims, and since the days of Muhammad, were obsessed by proving, or by the willingness to prove, that the Islam is a valid religion which stands by itself on its own feet. And you can see it, even the Quran gives a very good echo, and I highly recommend to read the Quran. Gives a good echo of polemic, of arguments which he had with Jews and Christians. Many verses are start. They claim that you are, tell them such and such. Okay, answer them. They claim such and such, you should answer them such and such. Okay, definitely he was accused of all these things. So one of the ways how to fight Judaism and Christianity is to depict them as religions which finished their role in history, and Islam, which is the last religion in history, actually came to the world to replace them. Not to live side by side with them, but to be instead of them. Not only this, to build itself with the bricks of Judaism and Christianity. This is why Abraham was, according to the Islam, the first Muslim in the world, and Isaac and Jacob and Jesus and Johannes were all Muslims because they believed in one God. And since Islam came to the world to replace Judaism and Christianity, whoever was a believer in one God, evidently he was a Muslim and not any other thing, which was abolished later. There is a verse in the Quran which says, "Inna dina inda Allah al-Islam," means the religion with Allah is Islam. Means Allah doesn't recognize any other religion but Islam. So evidently whoever believed in one God is a Muslim. According to this, King Solomon built a mosque in Jerusalem. Okay? And all those prophets which are mentioned in the Bible, both the Old and New Testament, are actually all Muslims. Holy places belong to Islam, because Islam came to the world to hire all those religions, and if they had a church or a synagogue, today it can very easily be a mosque. Yes, ma'am.
I think, but in the Quran, Jerusalem is not mentioned.
Not mentioned.
Right?
Not mentioned.
How you can say it's a holy place to the Muslims?
Definitely it was not. Originally it was not.
It's the third one, right? After Mecca and Medina.
Only to the Sunni Islam. It was sanctified by the Umayyad dynasty in order to be a replacement for Mecca as a place for pilgrimage. Because of a struggle in the year of 682, 50 years after the Prophet Muhammad passed away. So Jerusalem was sanctified only by the Sunnis, not by the Shias. So
it's the Quran?
Shiites. They believe in the Quran, although they believe that the Sunnis forged the Quran by omitting 2 chapters which are mentioning Ali, the founder of the Shia. In one or another, Islam views itself as the higher of Judaism and Christianity, and Christianity and Judaism lost their validity, lost their role in history, and lost all the assets which they had, either real estate or lands or whatever. So Islam actually, Islam today is the only monotheistic religion, and Jews and Christians lost everything which they had ever in the world. So how can Jews today come and claim that the land of Israel belongs to them? It might have belonged to them once, but since Judaism was replaced by Islam, today Islam owns the land of Israel. So how can they come and say that this is their holy land and their holy city of Jerusalem? Now, Muslims are afraid that Jews came to this land, they regained their country, which they had once, and later in 1967 they took their capital, Jerusalem. What will be the third step? To build the temple. Means Judaism will come back to be a holy place for Jews, and Judaism will come back to be alive. means a relevant religion. So what will be with Islam? Islam, which came to the world to replace Judaism, they cannot take the fact that Jews are coming back to life, that Judaism comes back to life, because it poses a question on Islam, a theological question. This is why the struggle over Jerusalem is about theology before it is a struggle over territory or national issue. So from the religious point of view, Jews have no right to any place in the world. They can live peacefully under the rule of Islam, just like Christians and Druze and other infidels. And this is actually peace in Islam, not between states, I mean Islamic state and infidel state. This cannot be peace, because a constant war, permanent war, should be between Islam and all the others until all the world becomes Muslim. Peace can be temporarily given to others, and it should be breached when Allah gives the Muslims the ability to conquer other lands. And they have the precedent of the peace of Hudaybiyah, which the Prophet Muhammad did the same thing. He gave the prophets of the infidels of Mecca peace for almost 10 years in 628, and after 2 years he breached it and conquered Mecca. Why? Because they went to sleep on God, or they went to business and they left Mecca. So this is why peace in Islam is always peace between communities, not between states, between communities under the Islamic rule. So if Jews become subjugated to Islam, by the way, Islam means submission, not peace. So if when everybody will be submitted to Islam, submit itself to Islam and be subjugated by Muslims, this will be peace under Islam. This is the definition of peace by Islam. So this is why giving peace to infidels is a problem. So Judaism is not a religion anymore. Second thing is about Jews. Jews are not a people, not a nation. Jews are communities. Wherever they live, Jews in Iraq are actually Arab Iraqis who are Jewish, just like other Arab Iraqis who happen to be Muslims or Christians or Sabais or Mandais or Yazidis or Baha'is or Zoroastrians. Almost 10 religions that are in Iraq. So Jews are also Arab Iraqis who happen to be Jews, like other Arab Iraqis who happen to be Muslims or Christians. In Yemen, there are Arab Yemenites who happen again to be Jewish, just like other Arab Yemenites who are Muslims. In Poland, they are Polish from the ethnic point of view, yet Jews like other Polish who are Christians, and so forth. Wherever you are, in Morocco, in England, in the United States, in Afghanistan, Jews are a community of those nations wherever they lived in history. They were never a nation. By the way, this is the way in Islam, because religion doesn't make a nation. The Persians are Persians and Muslims. The Chechens are Chechens and Muslims. The Egyptians are Egyptians, or Arabs are Arabs and Muslims. The Islam doesn't make them into one nation. So the same are Jews. They project their life, their mindset on us. So Jews from Poland are Polish, and Jews in Morocco are Moroccans, and Jews in Iraq are Iraqis. All of a sudden, all these communities, or part of these communities, decide that they are a nation. Since when? Do they look the same? Do they sound the same? Do they have the same language? Do they have the same food? Do they have the same clothing? Do they have the same culture? Nothing. So who said that this is an artificial, invented nation? Those Jewish nation. they should remain wherever they are forever and have their life wherever they are. And they come here, they gather here in this country, and they claim that they are a nation, and they kill Arabs, and they send out others to refugeehood. What is this? This is not a nation. So they don't need a state and a land. So their religion is void, and they are not even a nation. And the third part of the problem is the land. In Islam, a land has only one-way ticket to enter Islam, not to get out of Islam. It is forbidden for Muslims to give up on land. Of course, here and there they are forced to give up on land. In Spain they were forced by the Reconquista of the 15th century, until they were kicked out in the end of the 15th century from Spain. Same happened in Sicily, same happened in the Balkans, in large parts of the Balkans, where they were ruling all the way to Vienna, where they were defeated in 1683. And only recently they had to give up on large part of Sudan, which became the new independent state of southern Sudan. And all these lands should return to the Islamic bosom, because a land in Islam has only one-way ticket. So Palestine, since it was an Islamic land, no, since it is an Islamic land, should return to Islamic rule. So when you see all these components, that Judaism is not a religion anymore, that Jews are not a nation, and their land, then Eretz Israel, is actually Palestine, which is holy for Muslims. By the way, it was sanctified by both the Islamic occupation of 628 and by the declaration of Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph, who occupied this country as a Waqf land. You know what Waqf? Waqf is a holy endowment of land. So it was sanctified twice. So since when those Jews whose religion is void, and they are not even a nation, have the permission to take a land for Muslims and to establish a state which is not ruled by Islam? Okay? So this is why it's not a matter of occupation of the West Bank or Judea Samaria or Gaza. It's the occupation of Tel Aviv, the problem. Not the problem of occupation of whatever. So the whole country is a problem. It's a Jewish state which is built on an Islamic soil. So this is when the religious point of view comes into the struggle. And this is why whenever they go out in demonstrations, you can see this on their shoulders when they put these things. So what does it say? On one side it says Al-Quds Lana, Jerusalem is ours, means Jerusalem should not be of the Jews, because this way Judaism will come back to life if they will be in Jerusalem. And on the other side is Palestine and Palestine. And Palestine is the whole country. So where, and this is the flag of the PLO, not the Hamas. So this is the message of the PLO. This is Palestine. And actually, if you Google the word Palestine, in most of the places you will see the whole country. Look at this. I googled the word Palestine in images. Just as a look at this. The whole country here, the whole country here, whole country here.
If you Google it in England?
In English, you'll see more the other message. But in Arabic, this is the message. Okay? The whole country, look at this. The whole country is now Palestine. I must have closed it. Okay, so this is actually what happens in in this regard, and you can do it by yourself. Just Google Palestine and you'll see that the flag, the message is 90% of the times the whole country, and not only what they say that they want. Means there is a difference between what they would take now and what their dream is, and what will they fight after they have what they have now. So when you add together the historic problem on one side and the religious problem from the other side, you can see that the state of Israel actually, or the occupation, is not the occupation of Judea, Samaria, or Nablus, or whatever. Occupation, the problem starts already in 1948, or even before, and Tel Aviv is occupied no less than Nablus. And the proof is that Israel now demands that the negotiations will lead to the end of the conflict, termination of the conflict. The Palestinians declare time and again that it will not be. Means even after they have their demand of Palestinian state, it will not be the end of the conflict. So, what is the point of getting to some kind of solution if it's not the end of the problem? And they will never recognize Israel as the state of the Jews. They said in 1,000 years they won't do it. Okay, so what's the point in getting to solution? So what is the solution, if there is any? I think that the only solution which can be is the 8-state solution. 8, you know, the number between 7 and 9. What do I mean? I don't have enough time now to start elaborate about the culture of the Middle East, but tribalism in the Middle East is alive and killing, not only alive and kicking. You can see it in Iraq, you can see it in Libya, you can see it in many other places. Tribalism means that the people are loyal to the tribe rather than to the state. They are loyal to the clan, to the family, extended family, hamula, what you might say, and not loyal to the national framework, which in many cases is a creation of the colonialism, as we saw. People will not replace their loyalty to the clan or to the tribe by a new loyalty to a state. And this is unfortunately the main problem of the modern Arab state, modern, I would say the standard Arab state. Only a small group of states here in the Middle East behave differently, and these are the Gulf Emirates. The Gulf Emirates are stable. You never hear about demonstrations, not because of the oil, because Dubai has no oil and no gas, and Iraq has oil and gas, and it doesn't contribute to Iraq's stability, and so does Libya. Has also oil and gas, and Libya is a very, very unstable country. So definitely oil is not the source of stability in the Gulf. So what is the source of stability in the Gulf? The answer is the fact that every state, and I exclude Bahrain, I'm talking about Kuwait, about Qatar, and 7 Emirates which are united in the Arab United Emirates, which is Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Ras Al Khaimah and Sharqa and Majman and all those. Every one of them is based on one tribe. One tribe, one state. When you have multiple tribes, like in Iraq, everybody fights everybody, and the sociology is fragmented, and politics doesn't work, and economy is failing. While when sociology is stable, the political arena is stable, and the economy is flourishing. This is how why the Gulf Emirates are flourishing economically. What I think is the solution between Israel and the what called Palestinians is to copy this paradigm to the West Bank as well. First of all, Gaza is already a state. It's only a state. Without declaration, it is a state. It has its government, it has its legislative council, it has its judicial system, it has its economy, it has its borders, and it has its army and police and even military industry, and they know how to produce missiles, and they actually are a state from any factual point of view. You have to continue it. To establish a state in Jericho, a city-state, based on the tribe of the Arikat in Jericho, who live in Jericho, a state for the tribe. A state in Ramallah, for the Barghoutis and the Abu'ins, both big families of Ramallah. A state in Nablus, for the Al-Masri, the Tukan, and the Shaka families, who lived together for hundreds of years already. Another state in Jenin, another one in Kalkilia, Tulkarem, and the Arab part of Hebron, while Israel should forever keep the rural areas, the villages, in order to make sure that those hills do not become Hamas hills or Hezbollah hills, because nobody can assure it to Israel that they will never turn into Hamas hills. This is why I advocate this what I call the 8-state solution, which can look, let's say, the paradigm. I'm not saying that this is the only way how to depict it. I have it in another file. This is how it should look like. This is the West Bank. These are these states. The state in Hebron, Ramallah, Jericho, Shechem, Jenin, Tulkarem, and Kalkilia, while Israel should forever stay in those areas in order to make sure that Hamas doesn't make them into a jihadi land as they made in Gaza. They can be even larger to allow some industry. I'm not talking about the size. I'm talking about the principle. This should be the solution, the 8-state solution, 7 city-states. And look, there are small states in the world. Luxembourg, and San Marino, and Andorra, and Gibraltar, and the Vatican. And nobody in these countries suffers from claustrophobia. Only because of the size. On the contrary, big countries tend to fall apart. Look at the Soviet Union, and Sudan, and Algeria, and all these big countries which are built from conglomerate of nations and ethnic groups and religious groups and sectarian groups and tribes. They tend to fall apart or to become dictatorships in order to keep them in one piece. But homogeneous small countries are usually much more prosperous than conglomerates which fight within them. People fight within themselves. This is a solution which will give them stability and peace to us, and peace to them as well. They can move from city-state to another city-state with visa, with this kind of technicalities. But this should be the solution which is built on the idea of the Gulf Emirates. And every one of them is built on families, on clans, on tribes which live in those cities. They don't move from city to city. They don't get married within these cities usually. And this is why sociology should be the key, not politics. In my humble view, this is the only solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to ask about what will be the result with the population who live in West Jerusalem. They're going to be another state in the 8-state
No.
solution? Or
Jerusalem should forever be Jewish.
also the West neighborhoods of Arabs who live there?
Yes. No, all those villages should be annexed to Israel, and Israel should give them citizenship. It's not a big demographic problem, because this way Israel gives freedom to like 90% of the population and annexes, or at least offers citizenship to 10%, more or less. Sir?
If you had said that Muhammad was accused of recycling religion, Judaism and Christianity, if that's true and he views a number of the Judaism and Christianity as religious figures such as
Muslims,
Bar-Ilan, as Muslims, and is that used as a stepping stone, doesn't it say in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, that the covenant is like an everlasting binding, resolution or agreement between God and the Jews?
This is why Jews, right, you're right.
It's like a replacement theology, not only from Judaism and Christianity, but from Christianity and Judaism to Islam. So is it possible for Islam to exist without the whole replacement theology, which in my mind, it doesn't seem to make sense based on their adaptation of the Bible?
Well, there are Muslims who accept others. They are more or less the Sufis. The Sufi Islam delegate all this problem to Allah. They say, look, we are not, you're right that other religions are void since Islam came to the world, but we are not those who are going to kill them. We'll give it to Allah. If Allah decides that they should not live, He knows what to do. And they actually rely on Him, and they wait until the end of days when Allah does whatever He likes in the world. They live very peacefully with others, and they do not do anything against others. Here we have in Israel some sects of Sufis. They are very peaceful people. They have nothing against the state. Unlike the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, here in Israel, the Islamic movement, which is a very vicious enemy of the state, headed by Sheikh Raed Salah and others.
Would you say that that's the majority of Muslims around the world hold that view, or are you saying Sufis are a minority within their own religion, or? Look,
it's like a pyramid. Look, Muslim knows that Islam is the religion, and Muhammad is the seal of prophecy, and he is the most important prophet, and the Quran actually is the book of Allah, while the Bible in both its versions, the Jewish and the Christian one, is a forgery. This is the basic of Islam. And Jews are, and Christians are غَيَّرُوا وَبَدَّلُوا, means those who forged the Holy Scriptures. So definitely this is a common knowledge in Islam. What you do with this is the different thing.
If it's forged, then how can they base their religion on those historical figures if it's forged? They're saying that Judaism and Christianity is not.
Look, the Quran as the book which Allah has, He mentions Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, all those, and this is the real issue, not what's written in the Bible, which was forged.
And if there is no other question, we're a little bit short on time, so we will be finishing that, or any other last words?
Let me finish by one clip about what is to be done with Israel according to the Palestinians, and it is, I would say, performed by, not this, another one. No. This? I think it's this.
هناك المؤامرات لتحاول أن تغتال المسجد الأقصى، وهناك أيضا اغتيال التاريخ واغتصاب الحضارة، وأيضا تزييف الوقائع وطمس الحقيقة وتهويد المكان.
هدف تسمية هذا الحائط بحائط المملكة هدف سياسي. الصهيونية اليهودية لابد من إيجاد ذريعة لدفعها في روح أو عند الصهاينة أو اليهود في أوروبا للتمسك بشيء مادي في مدينة القدس، وقاموا بالادعاء وتسمية حائط البراق باسم حائط المملكة.
هدف من هذا الكلام أن هذا المصطلح وهذا الاهتمام الغريب، هذا الاهتمام الغريب بهذا الموقع بالذات، يعني هو عبارة عن شيء حديث وليس له جذور تاريخي.
نهائيا ليس له جذور تاريخي، هو اصطلاح سياسي لكسب قلوب وعاطفة الصهيونيين الموجودين في أوروبا للهجرة والقدوم إلى فلسطين. ليس أكثر.
Okay, this is how you create a new history by undermining the history of the Jews made recently by the Palestinian Authority in their TV. And with them, we should make peace. Thank you very much.